Echoes of the Iron Ridge. The morning of February 8, 1986, broke over the Canadian Rockies with a cold that bit deep into the bone. Silas, a veteran engineer, sat in the cab of his massive CN freight train, led by a powerful EMDSD 40-2 diesel locomotive. To him, the mountains weren't just scenery. They were a living giant of stone and ice. He monitored the analog dials and heavy levers of the control stand. The rhythmic thrum of the 16-cylinder diesel engine was a steady heartbeat against the biting Alberta wind. He was pulling 99 cars of grain and sulfur, a heavy steel serpent winding through the frost-covered pines. Miles away, traveling in the opposite direction, was the Supercontinental passenger train. Inside one of the silver Via rail cars, Reed sat with a book he couldn't quite focus on. He was heading home to Edmonton, watching the snow-draped trees blur past the window like ghosts. The passenger train, led by a classic streamlined FP9 diesel unit, was a silver needle threading through the wilderness. Reed sipped warm tea, enjoying the gentle, rhythmic swaying of the coach as the winter landscape flickered by in shades of white and deep evergreen. Near the siding at Hargwen, the tracks began to converge. Silas felt a strange flicker of unease. He had missed a crucial signal, a red light meant to stop his juggernaut before it entered the single-track section ahead. He looked into the blinding glare of the sun reflecting off the snow, and his heart hammered against his ribs. The freight train was a 3-locomotive monster that could not be stopped on a dime. Silas gripped the brake handle, his brow furrowed, as he realized the safety systems had not been engaged in time to prevent the entry. Reed looked up from his book when he heard a long, mournful horn blast that didn't sound like their own. He peered out the window and saw a shadow emerging from the curve ahead, a wall of yellow and black steel. The world seemed to slow down. The tea in his cup shivered, the surface rippling. He didn't have time to scream. He only had time to drop his book and brace his feet against the floor as the silver coach began to buckle under the force of the oncoming giant. The impact was a roar that swallowed the mountains, a cacophony of grinding metal and shattering glass. When the world finally stopped shaking, the silence that followed was even more terrifying. Silas pulled himself from the wreckage of his mangled cab. The air was thick with dust, snow mist, and the sharp, pungent scent of leaking diesel fuel. The cold hit him like a physical blow, but he didn't stop. He stood, staggering on the uneven ground, looking at the devastation where the two giants were now locked in a grim, twisted embrace. Inside the passenger coach, Reed pushed away a heavy suitcase that had fallen from the rack. The car was tilted at a dangerous angle, its silver skin torn like paper. The scent of pine had been replaced by the stinging, freezing air. He could see others around him, dazed and frightened in the dim light. Instead of climbing to safety, Reed stayed. He began to move debris with his bare hands, his fingers growing numb in the sub-zero air as he searched for anyone pinned beneath the seats. Silas made his way toward the passenger cars, his boots sinking deep into the drifts as he navigated the debris field. He met Reed at a large opening in the silver hull of the Supercontinental. They didn't know each other's names, but in that moment, they were brothers of the Ridge. Silas reached out a steady hand to help Reed pull a passenger to safety through the jagged metal. "We have to move," Silas grunted, his voice rasping in the freezing air. Help arrived from the nearby town of Hinton. Everett, a local volunteer, was among the first to reach the remote, snow-clogged site. He carried a heavy industrial flashlight and a bulky 1980s-era medical kit, his breath coming in ragged plumes in the freezing air. He saw the mountain of twisted steel, a scar on the beautiful landscape. He didn't hesitate, clicking on his light and rushing into the chaos to bring the first flicker of hope to the survivors. For hours, the three of them, Silas, Reed, and Everett, worked alongside dozens of others under the flickering glow of emergency flares. They carried the injured through knee-deep snow to waiting helicopters that churned the air. The bitter frost tried to sap their strength, but the warmth of human spirit pushed them forward. Silas and Everett shared the weight of a heavy stretcher, their faces etched with exhaustion, but refusing to stop until the last person was found. Decades later, a quiet memorial stands near the tracks at Hinton, tucked away in the permanent shadow of the mountains. Reed, now an older man with silver at his temples, stands before it in the softly falling snow. He touches the cold, etched stone, remembering the roar, the cruel frost, and the strangers who became heroes in the wreckage. The mountains remain, silent witnesses to a day when tragedy met a courage as unyielding as the peaks themselves.